Welcome back to our 20s. Today we have the second half of my conversation with Seamus O'Brien, a key figure in my life, a good friend, and someone who has been incredibly influential in my faith. Today, we discuss our time on the collegiate rowing team at Fairfield University. For Seamus, this is a story of finding joy from an unlikely source and the importance of taking initiative if you want to make a change in your life. For me, this is a story about taking accountability, as we acknowledge my shortcomings as a teammate and have a very healthy discussion about learning from the past so that we can progress into the future. I think everyone can take away at least one bit from this conversation, as this isn't a story about sports. It's a story about life as a whole. Without further ado, Seamus O'Brien. Kind of just do this as like a soft opening, like we're in part 2 now.
Action.
Clack. Welcome back, everyone. We haven't gone anywhere, but you have for a week.
We're back.
We're back. If you can't see, we're doing like the little smiley face. Thanks for tuning back in. If you haven't checked out part 1, it was a great conversation that we just had. We got really heavy into faith on
Pause
Christianity.
it right now. Go back.
Go back now. We got into Christianity particularly because that's what we both choose to practice, but on a deeper level, just faith as a whole. And I think everyone can gain something from that conversation. I highly encourage you to hear what Seamus had to say because he had a
leadership
points. Leadership too. Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to get into with part 2 here. It's focusing very heavily on how we initially met and how we spent a lot of our time together in college, which was being a part of a collegiate rowing team. It's something that I didn't know about. Yeah, stags up, baby. Something I didn't know about until I got to school. Didn't know the sport really existed. And it's something that I can't imagine not being a part of my life anymore. Well, I can't imagine it not being a part of my life anymore because it's not. But that point in my life, I don't know what life would have been like without it for a variety of different reasons. But one of them, and at the forefront, was, oh, Captain, my captain here, Seamus O'Brien. You are the embodiment of Philly rowing at its core. And I know whoever doesn't understand rowing has no idea what I just said, but I'm going to have you elaborate. You are the highest authority that I know on rowing in terms of history and what goes into being a rower, because it's a lot more than people would think. So I just want you to, similar to the beginning question of last episode, what was your childhood like? I want you to go into rowing specifically. What was your upbringing with rowing like? How did you develop this passion for a sport that I don't want to call it niche because it's an Olympic sport. It's not niche, but it's not mainstream by any means.
No.
And people don't appreciate the amount of effort, and not to toot our own horns, it's straight up a fact. The amount of effort and the amount of technique, skill that goes into this sport that nobody really realizes. So I'll let you take the floor.
I'll start with one of my favorite facts about rowing real quick, to the point about it just being tough. And again, I'm not trying to, I've heard you say this in other podcasts, and I do agree. Like, what I'm about to say all about rowing comes from my perspective, and like, I'm going to do my best to not like try to put it above a bunch of things, but it's genuinely because I just love the sport so much and how important it is in my life. One of the most interesting things about rowing, and I don't know if everyone knows this, it is the only sport in the world that has ever come out of a capital punishment.
What kind? I mean, that's such a flex.
like,
like
people used to have to, like, the Vikings for the, or it actually might have been before the Vikings. It might have been like the Romans or something, or the Greeks. But like, I just remember my coach telling me the story. It was a capital punishment in that, like, say you did something like really bad, they would row like across the sea, like maybe to the Mediterranean or whatever, and like they would row and row and row. And if you like pass out and you're done, then guess what? You're probably dead. Like, they just made you row until you die. And if you made it to the other end, they let you free. So just think about that for a second. But that's a little interesting fact about rowing. In terms of my upbringing, it was not out of capital punishment. It was a little bit of a different upbringing related to rowing. So, and this is, I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, because as I like kind of like briefly said to you, Tom, like, Fairfield as a new program does not, like, there's a lot of things they don't know about the history of rowing. And because of that, a lot of people are new to the sport when they join college. So it's like, it's something that a lot of people actually don't know about me in terms of like my history before Fairfield with rowing. They just knew I rowed in high school, but they don't understand kind of the depth of it. And so I'll take that journey back for a minute. Yes, I'm from Philadelphia, which is arguably one of the probably one of the most prestigious or like famous locations for rowing in the United States. There's some other places in the world, like Henley is like one of the most amazing places in the world for rowing. Boston obviously is a big location for it. Believe it or not, like San Francisco is a big rowing town. There's a couple other locations, but Philadelphia in particular has a very strong history of rowing that's very connected to its core. And a lot of that in particular has to do with scholastic rowing. And that's because when I can't. I'm gonna mess. I should know the history by heart because of my family, but like essentially, Jack Kelly, who is Grace Kelly, who's a famous actress people may know from like marrying the Prince of Monaco. He was like a famous worker in Philadelphia, and he got scholastic rowing started. So Philadelphia, in particular, on top of Penn and Drexel and a lot of these big Temple, these big name schools that are into rowing there, it's actually an even bigger high school sport, which is very unique in comparison to a lot of other areas of the country, like Boston, where rowing is big, but it's definitely more of a collegiate thing. High school's there, there's clubs there, but rowing for high school is really unique. So, with that being said, I mentioned in the previous episode, which go back to if you didn't listen to, my family has been going to my high school for generations. My grandfather, who was class of 48 at my high school, he actually was one of the first members of my family to start rowing in the 40s, which again is pretty early on when scholastic rowing started. There's like deep history before that related to like sports betting and all this stuff. But like for high school, like collegiate, like that type of rowing, like the 40s is definitely a starting point in Philadelphia for high school rowing. My grandfather rowed on my high school team for 4 years. He had four varsity letters. He started off as a coxswain his freshman year for the varsity eight, which is for people who don't know rowing, that's like the top premier boat you can be in. And he ended his senior year stroking the varsity eight, and then he went on to race at like LaSalle. And because of his passion for rowing, it was his life. And because of that, he had a big family. My mom's one of eight. My mom is my grandfather's daughter. And so he kind of had this thing where he was very passionate in similar ways to me about like Jesuit education and, getting involved in these types of things and showing care and empathy for these areas. He got involved heavily in rowing. He stayed involved. He became a significant, donor to the programs. He was heavily involved in Olympic programs that were involved in the the Philadelphia area. Every one of my uncles, when they went to high school, were required to at least try out for the men's rowing team. They didn't have to end up doing it long term. I have some uncles that did soccer and like rugby and stuff, but three out of my five uncles, no, four out of my five uncles rowed majority of their time in high school. So it's kind of an expectation that you do it. And then my oldest cousin, who was in the Philadelphia area, ended up rowing. And through all that time period, not only was my grandfather heavily involved with like picking the coaches, like if anyone's seen Friday, let me make this a lot quicker. If anyone's seen Friday Night Lights and they know the character Buddy, who is the like donor or like the I'm forgetting the term, Tom. What's the term for like
Like a
booster?
booster. Yeah.
Yeah. My grandfather was essentially a booster for a high school rowing team, which is really crazy to think about. So he was heavily involved and just continued to give back to the program, whether it be his time, helping with like, fixing boats or, trailing, like bringing boats from course to course. But he also was a significant donor. He actually was, for anyone who's been to Philadelphia, there's Boathouse Row, but there's a boathouse further up on the river, which is on the race course. It's at the 1,000 meter marker. It's the St. Joe's University and Prep High School boathouse. He's the reason it got built, amongst other people. Like he fought City Hall for 20 years in the historical societies to get that built. So I'm not kidding when I say like there are like multiple blueprints in my grandparents' basements of like this boathouse getting built and all of these things. And so I basically grew up like with rowing my life. My mom's wallpaper on her phone is like me as a baby, like her holding me as a baby, like in a rowing seat, like is on wheels. like when a boat was getting like inducted when I was like a little kid, well, obviously a baby. So like it's been a part of my whole life. I can't tell how many photos I am as a little kid around like boat christenings and boathouse things and being on the river. So I just grew up with it. And when that stuff happens, it's not just that you start to care about it, but it's also the expectation and the connections to the family of how much it means to them ends up getting passed on to you. And I wasn't looking to do rowing like my first 14 years of my life, but I saw how much it meant to like my family. And I got involved in it in high school because one, it's something we were required to do as family, to at least try out for the rowing team. Now, for context, for people who don't know me, then I was 5'1" and 75 pounds when I went into freshman year of high school. And for anyone who knows the general build of a rower, it's not 5'1" and 75 pounds. Tend to be a lot taller and bigger and stronger. So I initially went as a coxswain, and similar to my grandfather. And I kind of just, I got involved in it. I ended up really enjoying it. I don't know. I mean, I can get into the whys later, but for the purposes of talking about the Philly experience, I got into it. There's a lot of like experiences with my family when I was in Philly that like made that more intense, which I'm happy to get into more. But for the purposes of not making this one question so much longer than it already is and answering, um, there's a lot of internal family connections on top of just the fact that I'm from Philly. I quite literally grew up with rowing my entire life. And I volunteered and I used to give out medals at the race that Tom and I used to race a thing called Dad Vales, like one of the biggest college races. Like as a little kid, I gave medals to the medalists there. Like this is just something that's been a part of my life since as long as I can remember.
There were a lot of nuggets of knowledge in there that I certainly did not know about, but I enjoyed it very much. I didn't real I've always known since I've known you that
Yeah.
it was a key part of your upbringing. It was a key part of family history. I didn't know it was that deep though,
Yeah.
and I can relate to that in different kind of ways. My family is a big baseball family. Everyone played baseball. It wasn't a requirement, I would say, but it was definitely something that was heavily encouraged. And I think a lot of people can relate to it in different facets of their life. That family expectation, where you're expected to be a part of a tradition, expected to uh, be striving for greatness in a tradition that the family holds, that could be a lot of pressure. Maybe
Yes.
something that you're not ready for at a young age, especially when you're in high school. But I know a lot of young boys, especially, we get brought up and we want to make our family proud. We want to be the big guy in the household. And when you're in high school, you're a part of a very serious rowing team at a prep school in Philly, on the Schuylkill River. You know, you can elaborate more, but you have guys from your high school who are going off to some of the most prestigious colleges for rowing that there are. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, it's difficult, I think, for some people to understand. I don't say difficult for people to understand this, but because of the legacy that was created back in the 50s, like the prep rowing team has been consistently strong for years in numbers and in funding and success because of all the same, like of those reasons, just kind of continuing to flow. And numbers are important, money's really important in rowing, so all those aspects has allowed the prep in the high school I went to be successful for a very long time. I would argue, and it's not me just being a homer, it's just the reality. In terms of like legacy and prestige, the prep crew rowing team is arguably, if not the like top, it's definitely without a doubt a top three program in high school history. Like
Wow.
if you're just looking at scholastic rowing in general, there is a poll on a website called Row 2K, which is a common website for people who know rowing, about the best rivalries in rowing. Um, there is Yale Harvard, there is Oxford Cambridge, and then on like they were doing a poll, and there's another answer that was the prep and every versus everyone else. And that actually was in, I forget if it won, but it was in competition with the Yale and Harvards and the Cambridge and Oxfords of the world. Like it's that serious. Like everyone hates us. Like everyone hates us. It's a prestigious program. And to what Tom was saying, I have teammates that went to like Harvard, Dartmouth, Yale, like UDell, like Georgetown, like you name the major, Cal Berkeley, you name the major school, they went to it for rowing.
Yeah. And I'm no, if any of our teammates are listening, I'm sure they're sick of already hearing the prep multiple times throughout this podcast.
Oh,
But
100%.
100%, and I'm
100.
not sorry, not sorry, but it's important context to where I want to transition to, because you come from this prestigious program when you're in high school,
Yes.
and you are at Fairfield University, where I don't want to use the analogy of bad news bears, because it wasn't like a dumpster fire, but it was not nearly the quality of the prep. I'll use the term. I feel so the prep.
I
It,
got it. I
yeah,
got it, guys.
yeah, that felt good. Um, it wasn't the quality that you were used to in high school. It wasn't
Yeah.
elite by any means, and I'm not going to sugarcoat any part of our discussion today. It was not elite by any means. It was not at the pinnacle of competition, especially at the Division One level. Which another important piece of context is divisions don't really matter as heavily in collegiate rowing as they do in other sports. I mean,
Mhm.
Tufts University is one of the most elite programs that there are. They're considered
Great
Division
program.
Three, but at the Division One level, it was not elite by any means. When you make that transition and you're coming into a program where you're used to you're around Ivy League guys, some of the biggest guys in the high school land who are going to go on and do amazing things, and you're landing at this program. Was it a culture shock? Was it a general shock? What was the initial reaction when you find yourself in this spot?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that should be addressed in this answer. First off, I realized that in the previous question we didn't touch probably as much on expectations as we should. So I'm happy to go back to that if you'd like, because there are some important aspects of that can
Yeah,
relate.
if you think it would be good for context, why not? Yeah,
Um,
that'd be good.
we can come back to it.
Okay.
But I think to your point about like let's just take expectations for example in high school. As I mentioned, I came in as a coxswain in freshman year of high school. I eventually hit a growth spurt, and I'm now 5'10", and I was at that point 120, 130 pounds. Now I'm in like by college I was in like 130s, 140s, which again is still fairly small for rowing. I transitioned to row my junior year of high school, which for people who it's going to be difficult for people to understand how that and I'm not trying to gas myself up here, but how difficult that transition is to to switch from a coxswain to a rower. It's all mind versus going all mind on coxing to go to full body, and to actually get in like insane serious conditioning. So not only did I do that transition in high school in a seriously competitive program where I was way behind everyone else in terms of my age by 2 years, by senior year I have made our lightweight eight, which was from a lightweight is anyone under 150 pounds. There's a specific category, kind of like wrestling. It's anyone over 150 or under 150. Our lightweight program was phenomenal in high school. I won the Stotesbury Regatta in our lightweight eight my senior year, which is again the highest lightweight boat you can get in height in my team before you end up going in the heavyweight eight, which I wasn't competing for because I'm not over 150 pounds. I won like the Stotesbury Regatta there. I came in second in our national championship. I won our cities. I was in I was all division. I was all the things that you can talk about. I got named like most it's essentially a most improved thing. It was called the Hammer Award in high school, where it's like the person they didn't expect to basically make the boat at the beginning of the year ended up having the most surprising year. That was me. So when I was looking at colleges, I had a pedigree of success in winning championships. And to what you're saying, Tom, like that is a bar people like winning, and I like winning. Like I hate losing.
Yeah.
It's something I didn't talk about a lot in college, but I hate losing. And so for me to take I was looking at schools like Drexel and Temple and SJU where I could have gone, rowed, or coxswained and been a part of a team that won medals on a consistent basis, to your point. Fairfield was not at that bar. And I think there was a couple of decisions that kind of came into that. And first off, I wanted to go somewhere for my college experience, not just a row. I think that's something that if you heard my first conversation, you can recognize I'm a fairly holistic person in how I think. Um, But I think the bigger thing that really stood out to me was I had the unique ability to enjoy all of that success with a program that was already standing on a great legacy. I did not create a legacy, I was a part of a legacy. I thought that it would be incredibly powerful looking at what my grandfather had done at my high school and what he had built at the prep and what it has become today as they continue to win world and like national level championships. To be a part of a program where I could put my own fingerprints, because the reality is I am not capable of rowing at the Ivy League level and competing for a top boat. I wasn't looking to get into somewhere where I could just like automatically be in the top boat because I was going to work. I wanted to work for it. But I was like, let me go to a program where I can have a direct impact immediately, not just on a competitive level, but over my time there, be able to invest in it so much that when I leave, it is a better place than when I came in. And to me, that was a really special experience, not just because I am so proud of what Fairfield rowing has become since even when I started, but also because that is a very relatable experience to what my grandfather had, and kind of continue to see it grow over that time period. And hopefully for the foreseeable future, as I remain involved as an alumnus, um, is something that I want to have a shared experience with him, even though he's passed. So, like, to me, that's a lot of the difficulty but beauty of like going to a program like Fairfield, where that success wasn't immediate.
That level of forward thinking is something that isn't prevalent in a lot of young people, especially. And again, it speaks to your character that I applaud you for having that level of forward thinking and having that level of self awareness to be as blunt as possible, of knowing that if you're going to go to a higher level program, you're not going to have as much of an impact as you would like to have, as opposed to if you went to a smaller level program, such as Fairfield, where you can have an immediate impact on day one based on the structure of the program, based on the current state of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it speaks to your leadership skills, which we'll get into very heavily, but it speaks to you as a person, where you want to make the largest impact you can on the people around you.
Yeah.
And you thought that this would be a great opportunity, and you certainly did exactly that, as we'll get into eventually. When you arrive, you have this mindset of you want to make an immediate impact. And this is where I think our biggest division with rowing came. I didn't have that experience in rowing. I didn't have the background. Like I said, didn't even really know it existed. I
Yeah.
came onto campus and I got the general blast email that every single student that shows up to Fairfield University on day one receives, and it says, "Hey, you have two arms, two legs. I hope let's get you on the rowing team if you want."
Yeah.
Um, and I remember I looked over at my roommate at the time, and we were like, "This would be fun. We can meet some people. We can have some fun. Maybe they'll let us come to some parties." And we showed up to day one, and we had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
We proceeded to as lightly as I could put it without cursing, mess around for a couple months, not really doing any real work or experiencing what it was really like on the team, just
Yeah.
being a part of the community. And that was my initial integration into the sport.
Yeah.
It was a fun thing. It was something that allowed me to build friends immediately when I got to college, something that made me feel like I belonged right away. And I didn't take it seriously from the start. It was not something that was in my family DNA like that. It was not something that I knew at the bottom of my heart that I was going to be the number one rower on the number one boat in the world. Because frankly, I didn't even know what that meant. I had no idea what it meant to work that hard in this kind of sport. And before you keep going, you can't put into words really what it means to work hard in this sport if you haven't experienced it. Because for me personally, I was a athlete my entire life, but I have never felt anything to the extent of pain that comes from being in a rowing race, both on a rowing machine, which in rowing terminology is referred to as an erg, ERG,
Oh gosh.
um,
A
or
pain machine.
on the water. Can you try to quantify for the audience, because it's gonna tie into our later points? Try to describe that level of pain, because it is in my words, undescribable. But I want you to try, because it's so crucial to the point I want to make later on. So I'll let you take the floor again.
Yeah. I'll do my best because I feel like I do have to do this for a fair amount of people. and there's a couple of different ways I've heard it explained that I really do like. From a physical standpoint, there's a couple ones I really think are, I'm not going to say are accurate, but the concept is pretty much there when you think about the motion and what you're doing. First off, a lot of people don't realize rowing is a leg sport. Public service announcement.
Oh yeah.
These arms did not get me to row a national, like at the high school competitive level, and they sure as hell didn't get me to row at the college level. My legs are much bigger and much stronger. Um, so I'll start by saying that. With that being said, rowing, there are two specific ways I like explaining it. Rowing is the perfect combination of a physical, like, um, it's a combination of endurance and strength on top of finesse, but that's a whole nother thing. Like, finesse is getting into a little more of a mental situation. Or so you're thinking about a sport where you're basically just pushing your legs like crazy as if you were doing a deadlift or squat, but you're doing that motion in a 2000 meter race, which is a common sprint race that you see in the Olympics. Which when you watch the Olympics, they're doing it in like 5-6 minutes. That is going to be over 200, probably at least 200, 220 strokes. Could be more depending on how fast you're going. So imagine doing 200 deadlifts in a row with like a considerable amount of weight on there. And I'm not saying like 400 pounds, but like even when you throw 135 pounds on the bar, it's a simple plate. Guess what? When you do that at a high pace, your lactic acid like builds up in your legs and it really, really hurts to the point where when you're doing a 2K on the erg, you could probably cry at the end because I have cried at the end.
Same. No shame.
So no shame. It is that painful. Um, so I would say I like to describe it in that way, like over 200 deadlifts in a row, like without stopping. Because guess what? If you stop, you mess up the rest of the boat and you lose the race. So all that pain was worth nothing. And then on top of it, the other one I like is imagine sprinting as fast as you can for 30 seconds and then going for another 6 minutes. That's the way, like a mix of those two for me are the best way to explain a physical rowing race. But then when you add in the technical and the team aspect of the sport, you take those two from the physical standpoint, but then you layer on top the fact that you have to be in complete synchronization with the person in front of you and behind you, not to mention the coxswain that's telling you what to do from a race perspective and strategy. You have to be completely in sync in them. So I have to, when Tom was rowing in front of me or Tom was rowing behind me, we had to be completely in the perspective of I had to know every single mannerism of the person that I'm working with. So I had to not only understand them as an individual, but what every single aspect of their body motion meant. So you have to understand that. And then I would say, like golf, like you think about people talk about golf, like you have to really get like a consistent stroke. Well, rowing, you take a stroke. If you aren't doing that in a consistent way where you're just repeating the same process, maybe 200, 400, when you're doing it like a 10,000 meter like piece, that's over 1,000. That's getting up there in strokes. Like that can be thousands of strokes. And people talk about like the 10,000 hour aspect of like mastering something. Like I've rowed for 9 years and I think I have a pretty good technique, but guess what? Like that's tens of hundreds of thousands of strokes and that's still not enough. So you add all of those things in, it's incredibly more complex than people understand. It's like, oh, that's the one where you sit in a boat and you pull your arms back and forth. Like, not quite that.
If only it were that simple. Yeah.
Dude, if it were only that simple, like it'd be so much more enjoyable at times. But it actually wouldn't, because the reward wouldn't be as enjoyable. And as Tom knows from experience, and I know from experience, when you hit a rowing stroke right and you race well, there are very few feelings that are better in the world, in my opinion, at least.
Well, that's the perfect jumping point is the reward, the pain, the time, the sacrifice that all goes into it.
Yeah.
It's where our viewpoints on this subject were so different and what caused us to go down very different paths in our journey. And I wanted this to be the subject point of this second episode because We talked about it in the first one. Sports are such a great metaphor for life.
Yeah,
I looked up the quote just to make sure we get it right. It's John Wooden. Sports don't reveal character; they build it. It's so
look at you
true.
doing your research.
I did. I'm trying to be a good host over here. There was an aspect to my character during that time where I wasn't mature enough to admit the situation that I found myself in, and I'll elaborate on that. I got into the sport, and I think there are definitely some guys and gals on the team that can relate to it, whether they want to admit it or not, doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
We got into the situation where we joined for a social aspect, especially towards the end when everyone asked, "Why haven't you quit yet? All you do is complain about this sport. Why haven't you quit?" It all came down to the social aspect, the community, everything we talked about in the last episode, being a part of something that was bigger than yourself. But where it started to falter was this idea of the sacrifice of the time that you're putting in, the commitment, that reward wasn't stacking up for me like it was for you.
Hmm.
And that was something that was very hard for me to admit. And I wish, looking back on it, it was something that I would have admitted earlier. And I say that because I realized the potential damage that you can cause to the people around you when you're not fully committed to something like that. And it's a hard thing to admit, but the whole point of the show is reflection. And it's something that I've reflected upon for a while. And talking to you, who was someone who was so influential in me staying with the team and growing for as long as we did, we did get to a point where, COVID hits during the middle of school. We had to shut down, but we did get to a point where it, things were interesting. We can get into it a little bit more on like the state of the team, just in terms of performance and everything. But
Yeah.
I'll say at the high level first. Being in that situation and finding myself not as committed as I should have been to the team, and I know there are people around me who would share a similar type of sentiment. For the extent of the time that I was with you, you're a captain for the majority of it. How do you go about being in a situation? Again, you come from a prestigious program in high school, and now you're in a program where half the guys really want to be there, and half the guys are begging for it to get canceled. How do you go about leading a group like that? And I'll add a subpart to the question because you don't necessarily have to always lead a guy like me, right? Rowing is split up into multiple boats. Like you said, the varsity 8 is the highest standard. With our team, we mostly focus on the varsity 4, which is just a smaller boat, 4 guys in the boat.
Yeah.
You have to focus on those 4 guys, but at the same time, you have someone like me who, to put it as harsh as possible because it's true, you have someone like me who's being more of like a cancer to the team, where I'm not fully committed. I'm in a bad mood sometimes when we come to practice. I'm bringing other guys and gals down with me, and you're at the forefront of it, and you're getting you're getting slack from people like me who are like, oh, this guy's just so into it. Like, why do we have to be into it all the time? Why can't we just have fun? Because that's what I came into it for. And now you're trying to change the culture. You're trying to lead a team, and you have competing voices. It's like we talked about with faith and everything like that. You have competing voices from everywhere saying that you shouldn't do this in your life, you shouldn't do that. How do you go about keeping structure in a team setting, and how do you go about staying true to what's important to you?
There's so many different ways this can go, and I don't mean like in a positive. I just mean like there's so many different things to talk about in
Yeah,
this conversation.
it's a loaded question. I know. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Like I'm just saying like there's so many different things to get into. First off, I'm really glad that you and I are getting to have this conversation because um I feel like you and I really didn't get to talk about like your time kind of ending like with the
Yeah.
team and like obviously my transition with the team and like those experiences because obviously I don't think it's any like surprise there's a lot of people in your class that kind of just decided to opt out, which like I have no major ill will towards people. I'm a loving and caring person. If
Mhm.
there is one side of me that does tend to become a little more of an asshole and intense, it is this side of me. But as you understand, I think compared to maybe some other people that may not understand as well, it comes from, and especially now hearing some more of my personal experiences, there is a deep core individual like place where that comes from like a love and a passion about it. And so I think to what to get to the question that you're asking about, how do you lead two groups that, have different opinions on not just the end result of the team, but what the team is supposed to be in the moment. And I think the reality is that you have to figure out, as I kind of mentioned in the first episode, and the way I viewed it was that if I am working, as you mentioned, this sport is all about, like, it is so much work and it's so much sacrifice. And I'm like, it is something that it is not lost on me, which is why I love so much. I love all my teammates, no matter how different they are, because anyone who's willing to get up and do that with me every morning, like, that is a special human being. And like, I have no issue saying that to anyone that I used to row with. And I think with that, there's something about the biggest standard. I think you probably have heard me say this too, and I'm glad you're bringing up the fact that, like, where you kind of stood. The biggest thing I asked of people when they came to practice as a captain was that, come, like, you got all of your things going on in the world, but when you're here from 5:45 to 9 a.m., or when you are on the team and you're in practice, it's not just about you, it's about the team. And therefore, your individual, I care about you as an individual, but your individual situation right now is not the issue. The team is what we are trying to accomplish here. And with that, I think I would always just ask, look, when you show up, you're about the team. You give 100% that day when you're there, and you love the person next to you. Like, I don't care, like, if you don't like them. Like, there's people on the team I was not a fan of. Like, and I love them, but I'm not a fan. Like, I wasn't a fan of at the time. And like, but for that 3 hours, I got to put it together. Like, I got to deal with it. And I think what would really bother me is when people weren't willing to be a team player. To me, it was all about just being a team player. And while, just to take a quick note on you specifically, what I really appreciate about you, Tom, is that while I understand there were points where you were not enjoying it, and I saw it, like, I very was aware, there were a few moments where I was like, Tom is ready to quit. Like, he
Not the
is,
best actor. Yeah.
yeah, there were times I'm like, not ready, does not want to do this. You were, at least from my perspective, in comparison maybe some of our other teammates, or you were never an asshole to another person on the team. And as long as you're not tearing someone else down, I can get behind you. So thank you for always being from that perspective. But again, to get to the main question, to me, you have to recognize the fact that the people are coming from different perspectives. Some people aren't willing to recognize that. I come from a program that was incredibly successful, and there are people like me on the team that wanted to give that 100% all the time and work there. And the way to motivate them there was very different from the way to motivate maybe like someone that was a walk on, or someone who wasn't as interested in that, like, high intensity winning championships mindset. To me, it was about getting that person step by step closer to that place. Because the reality is, a lot of people that don't understand that sacrifice and haven't seen that success in this sport in particular, which is so unique, is recognizing what it takes to get there. And to me, it was, if I can show you, as someone who had to deal with this myself in high school, even though I was on a successful team, that, coming from coxswain to rower, like, the steps, like, hey, like, you beat, like, your previous time, or like, hey, you got a little bit faster, like, hey, you just did this, like, that's a huge step. If you can motivate someone just a little bit, like, it's not about getting 0 to 100, it's about getting 0 to 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and eventually you build them up to 100. So to me, it was the mindset, like, motivating someone that was a former recruit. Like, I'm going to think about that very differently than the way I motivate someone that was a walk on, because the walk on doesn't have the experience and understanding of what this is like before here. So I have to help them slowly, gradually take on the identity and individual sport. And guess what? There are people that were on the team that ended up being fantastic walk ons because they had that experience. And that was beautiful to see, because the development of them was just amazing. But that's not for everyone. So it's just like trying to, again, deal with rowing in particular as a journey sport. It is not about the destination. If you're in it for the destination in rowing, you pick the wrong sport. So I think recognizing that and trying to work people through those journeys, and enjoying those milestones as they go is what was special. And like that's how I did it or attempted to do it.
Yeah, and I think that was very well said. I think if our teammates listen to this, I'm sure there's some who probably are like, "Oh my god, this is not how any of this happened. This is ridiculous." They're trying to.
Call
Uh,
me out if I'm wrong. Like
no,
too.
you're not, and
Call me
that's the best part about all this is that you're not wrong. And I think if it's not calling out anyone in specific. I'm calling myself out more than anybody. I know myself. There were times where I was like, in reference to you, it was like that there were some, not to curse on here, but I was like, oh my god, this guy. It's 5:30 in the morning. It's Saturday. Like, come on. Like, I'm just here to have fun. Like, why we got to do this? Like, it used to be so much fun on this team. Stuff like that. It's when you're dealing with people who aren't all in. I think what it came down to for me was as I started to honestly realize what was going on more and more and how much effort it would take to get to a position to compete at the highest level, to compete for medals and stuff like that. You look at the task ahead of you, and like you said, it is such a journey, especially when you're coming from a base level of zero. You have no technique, you have no idea what you're doing. You have to build up from the ground.
it's hard. It
It's
is hard.
very hard. And this isn't just rowing anymore. This is anything you're doing. It's when
Yeah.
you take a look at a challenge and you look at it and you say, oh, snap, this isn't going to be handed to me tomorrow. I'm going to have to work as hard, harder than anyone else, longer than anyone else, smarter than everyone else if I want to achieve this. And when
And
I looked at rowing, I looked at the timetable that we had. It was 4 years. And if you want to do something great in 4 years, you're going to have to commit to it. You're going to have to work out twice a day, break your body, no scholarship involved, taking away time from your friends, taking away time from your studies. But if you
mhm.
want to achieve something great, this is how you're going to do it. And what I said to myself midway through was absolutely not. But I'm still going to be here anyway because my friends are here. And that detracted from the team as a whole. And I know that some people will agree, but maybe they won't admit it out loud.
Yeah.
And
And
it's a tough conclusion to come to.
yeah.
And you know, I was immature back then to you know have my opinion of you specifically, other people on the team who were why is this guy working so hard? We will never compete with a school like Harvard or Yale in our lifetime. We will never do that.
I
What
didn't
is
know
this? What?
like, I didn't know that. Like
And I know, and like again, just think about it. Like this guy doesn't know. Like this guy knows it too, but like it's the same kind of thing. Like we all know it. Like we're not going to compete, but why does this guy get up every day? Why is he working harder today than he is yesterday? And there are certain things in life, like you said, you just it's blind faith sometimes, like we talked about in the last episode. You have this blind faith in yourself that, I'm going to put in the work and I believe in this and I'm going to help build something. Maybe it's not going to happen today. Maybe it's not going to be me who's out winning the medal, but I'm going to help build something. So in the future, they are going to go out and win a medal. And guess what? There's a group of guys at Fairfield University right now who just won a medal at one of the biggest regattas in the world.
absolutely. Shout out to that boat. Shout out to the Fairfield Stags that just got third ahead of the Charles. Like one of the highest rankings we've ever had. Like
It
so
it
proud of them. I was
when
emotional that day.
when I saw the news, I didn't believe it. I was like, that's a lie. There must have been 3 boats in the race. But I mean, it literally. I looked at it and I said that there's no way. But
Yeah.
first of all, it's a testament to those guys that such hard workers put in the time, put in the effort. But I'm going to attribute some of it to guys like you. You helped lay the groundwork. You helped shape the younger classes. You helped establish a culture, which is one of the hardest things that you can do. Shift a
Yeah.
culture from okay, we're this way now. We're a party team. We're just here to have fun. Everybody love everyone. Like we're just gonna have a good time. Shifting
Yelling,
that
baby.
ELE baby, shifting that away to all right. Yeah, we're still gonna have fun. We're still gonna do all the things as a team. We're gonna help build camaraderie and everything like that. But we're here to play. We're not here to just roll over and uh, just spend time wasting away. No, if we're gonna put in this much time, this much effort into what we're doing, we're gonna get something out of this. And you're starting to see it now with the program. I'm so happy for those guys because
So
I know for a fact that the blood, sweat, and tears, and I know tears are involved. Everything that goes into that, I am so proud of them. And as someone who didn't even, I'm not even going to give myself any credit for contributing to the culture. I'm going to give you and the guys who contribute to the culture know who they are. Just from your viewpoint now, what does it mean to you to see that the culture is developing the way that it is?
I want to answer that, but I want to go back to two things you quickly said right there.
Yeah.
That was I think was really important. You talked about you talked about recognizing that goal for yourself and how I think the reality is that to just close out two things about the team of where it was and we were just talking about. There are people that think about the destination. There are people that think about the journey. And there were people on the team at the time that we were there that were more focused on the destination. And guess what? We weren't on a team where there was a destination to be found. So if you weren't about the journey, it was going to be really tough to enjoy it. And I think that's the reality. And the second thing that I was just thinking about there was it's a really tough it's a really tough thing to get up that early and just do those things. So if you can't if you can't get behind or no, this is what I was going to say. Yeah, it was the fact that you mentioned how it became less fun over that time period. Um, and I think what's really important to recognize is that it's really easy when you come in as a freshman and sophomore to enjoy it because you have people that are looking up that you're looking up to and are making it enjoyable and like want you to have fun and you're having fun. There's less expectations on you.
Yeah.
But the reality is, as you get further, you become those people. And I talk to guys that are seniors now that were freshmen when I was there. I talk to guys that were freshmen when I was a fifth year. I talk to guys that were seniors when I was a freshman. Like the common refrain you always hear from upperclassmen to people that weren't on the team or people younger is that, man, this team isn't the same as it used to be.
Yeah.
And it's like one of these things like if it was, it wouldn't be that like that's not the way a team's supposed to be. It's supposed to change. You're supposed to develop in that leadership role. And like I'm not saying like everyone needs to be a captain, everyone needs to be a leader, but I'm just saying the concept of like I think that's a tough thing for some people to accept when they're talking about that. And it's like, look, when you develop at an organization, no matter if it's a team or a family or whatever, you go into a role where people look to you and that requires more work because guess what? My experience, my sophomore year was one of my favorite years on the team. And then by my senior year, I was really upset that I had missed out, particularly my junior year. Oh my gosh, when I was a captain, like I lost all my teammates that just like were in IRAs with me. I felt so alone, but I was like, wait a second, like it's my job now to show that to the guys below me. And it was really lonely for me at times, but I was like, at the same time, it was really empowering because I was like, wow, like I can help be that for these people. And I think I did an okay job at that. And so I just wanted to kind of wrap that up for a minute because I think it's really important for people to understand the group environment, how your role develops and changes through all aspects of life. And you can't, it's easy to step away from it because it's not the same. But recognizing your whole impact on that situation is really vital. So I go back to your question. I apologize, but I just kind of wanted to like put a ribbon on that real quick.
Yeah, and again, very well spoken. There's a lot that we could go on for hours about, just in terms of a lot of different subjects.
But
But
sorry, re-ask the question because I want to make sure I answer this correctly. I
yeah,
apologize.
it was more just from your viewpoint now. Now that you're removed from the program,
Yeah,
seeing that the culture is changing. There
yeah,
there are guys carrying the torch who are going to pass on this winning, hopefully even more of a winning culture than there is now, and
yeah.
grow the program to a point where it goes beyond, all right, a 4 is winning. And I know people who don't understand rowing have no idea what we're talking about. It's fine.
Four
But
people, five people
4
in a boat.
people in a boat, you got to graduate to 8 to play with the big boys. That's pretty much it. If you want to graduate from a point to getting to a 4 to an 8, having 8 really great guys on the team who are going to compete, that culture is being laid down right now. How does that make you feel as someone who has had rowing as such a focal point in your life, and you came into this program with a goal to help grow the program, and it certainly looks like it's on its way?
It's beautiful. Like it brings me to like tears. Like I'm not tearing up right now, but it can bring me to tears of joy in the right moment. Like that's not an overstatement. And like, yes, was it incredibly painful that I didn't get to maybe see some of that success firsthand because of situations and macro environments and the reality of where the team was 100%, for a lot of different reasons that are personal and because of all the work to your point that I put in. But going back even now where look, I know 2 of the years on the team, I don't know everyone, but I slowly am father, as they call me, Father Time, for the people that were saw me when I was in grad school. Um, it's incredibly special to see how much the team has developed, and I'm honored. Like like, to me, it's, I am grateful that I got to be a part of it. It's not just about like, oh, like you did so much. Like, no, like I'm grateful that I got to be experience that. And I just hope, and again, you mentioned this earlier about like, you know, not many people kind of take that perspective on it in the way that, I viewed the team and the journey and the vision and what I perceived. Um, but I found it incredibly fortunate to be a part of the team when I was. And I just hope that people continue to recognize the role that they play for the individuals around them on that, in that community and on that team. Like, it's now my responsibility as alumnus to continue to support the team, whether that be racing ahead of the Charles and alumnus, which I was so unprepared for. And then, or, donating, or whatever, going back for events. I hope the guys, as they continue to develop on the team and then new recruits come in and new walk-ons come in, recognize this isn't just about you. Like, if you're here, this is about something much more than yourself, and that's what's beautiful about community, and that's what's beautiful about teams. And it's that shared goal and vision, and how people can be more than themselves when they join something like that. And to me, like, a team, and particularly like a Fairfield rowing team, isn't just like, you can compare in a lot of ways to any form of community, in like whether that be like a faith community, a family. Like, to me, like, I view the team in a lot of ways like my family. Like, it's really that close to my life. And I hope that people who continue to be involved in it, and as it continues to grow, are able to, I'm not expecting anyone to ever be on the level that I am or below. Like, I could be above or below people in terms of intensity level and care, but I hope people recognize the importance, that can take the minute to like accept what is special about it, and how far they may not know how far it's come, but how important it is to people, whether they be currently on the team, formerly on the team, or maybe on the team in the future. And it actually, like, I've gotten not only mad or been in pain, but I've had serious moments of sadness, like thinking about like the situations where it hasn't been cared for. So I think that's kind of like how I view it. And that may seem like super dramatic to some people, but it's a reality for me. So just the way it is.
When you're as passionate about it as you are, I don't think it's super dramatic.
Yeah.
Again, you're not hurting anybody. As long as you're not hurting anybody, I think you be as passionate as you want to.
Yeah.
And it's just a testament to you that you're as open as you are about wanting to see it succeed, and how happy you are to see that it is hopefully going down a trend where it will be succeeding for years to come.
Yeah.
And as much as there were times where I wanted to leave, as much as there were times where I didn't want to show up, like you said, there will always be those core memories in my mind of just those times where I was with a group of guys who we might not talk every day anymore. It might be a while before we see each other again, but at that point in my life, it was the most amazing blessing that I could have asked for, to help
Yeah.
me find a family in a place that was foreign, and build relationships that, again, we might not talk every day, but those relationships will last a lifetime.
When I see like the handful of guys, like when I was up ahead of the Charles, I didn't see some of those guys in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And when I saw them, I didn't even row with a handful of them. They were like above me in age. I was the youngest guy in the boat. But like, man, did we have some laughs, and did we have some like just like core memories that like we love. And I'm actually curious if you're cool with me asking a question here.
Yeah, go for it.
Curious, what, like, we're talking here. What's your favorite memory from your time on the team that we can share on this podcast?
Oh, good caveat. Thank you. Um, I'll give you a competition one, and I'll give you just an in general one.
Great. We love
Competition,
both sides of it. We love both sides of the team.
competition. Freshman year, we're doing a varsity eight for the first time in a race in Saratoga, and it was our first time getting out on the course, actually rowing together. We had done it a couple times in practice, but we had no idea what a race was actually like. And we're out on the course. it's a beautiful day for the fall. It was like late October, but it was 60 something degrees. Water was, they used the term glass in rowing. It was nice, like you could cut right through it. There was no waves or anything. It was perfect. And even if the water was splashing in your face, it felt fantastic. We're out on the water, and it's a head race. And what a head race is in rowing is you don't all start at the same time. Boats are going off left and right, and you kind of judge how you're doing based off if you're passing boats, if boats are passing you, but you can't really get a good gauge on how you're doing. There's
Hmm.
about, I want to say there was about 32, 33 boats in our race. And we get off, we're all hyped up, like adrenaline's pumping.
Yeah.
It's a bit longer than a 2K race. It was like a 3.2, 3.3K race. And you had alluded to it earlier. There is few feelings in rowing that feel better than when like you just feel in sync with
The
everybody.
swing is there.
You
Yeah.
just know that you're in sync, and you feel like you're running on water. It's the coolest feeling when it comes to rowing. And
It's an
I-
art. Like it
it,
really is.
it really is. And don't get me wrong, we were not professional technique people by any means, but it felt so good. And you just hear guys laughing. Guys were in the back, just like one of our good friends Max. He was going like, "Woo, yeah, baby!" Like we were just going down the course. It felt great. And then I'll never forget one of our good friends, Brendan. You just see his oar fly out of the oar lock.
Oh my god.
They're in the middle of the race. We're like,
I forgot.
what just happened? Like, and he's scrambling off to the side of the boat trying to get his oar back in, and Max is in the front, just being like, just keep going, keep going. And everyone is cackling, like everyone's just having such a good time. No, it was the best racing experience that I had because no one was so overly concerned with how we finished. We were just so happy to be there, and it turned out we finished 7th out of 32.
It's insane. And that
And
happened in the boat.
and yeah, and that happened, and we came off the water, and our coach was just like, you guys beat some like really good teams. And we were like, I don't know, we're just amazing. But it was the perfect embodiment of just that pure joy, where we were just all happy to be with each other. We were doing something so fun. It was something that I think like 6 out of 8 guys in that boat had never done before, which is race. And it felt like child wonderment, right? Like that child, like you don't really care what's going on. You don't care who's watching you. You don't care if somebody sees an oars flying off the side of the boat. Like you're just enjoying the moment. And
Hmm.
that was the peak of the experience, just because it was so much love in that moment, just for being in the moment. And I think a similar type of moment is off the water. We do the student athlete talent show, where this
Oh,
was your sophomore year, my freshman year. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about is, I hope you never find the video. It will never see the light of day. But I mean, you do like fun little dances and skits for all the sports teams for charity. And did we do Taylor Swift that year?
what was amazing about that year was we had like a whole plan for something. For context, the talent show is on a Saturday, and we usually start to prep like 2 weeks out. Like we're thinking of ideas, but like 2 weeks out, we start to like prep. And so we're practicing for like a week, and like they got all these things, but they're not really working. I forget what we were supposed to do, but there's all these things is like this isn't working. The
Yeah.
Wednesday beforehand, like literally we have 3 days to get this together. We're like, this isn't working. We're changing it. We change it to "Look What You Made Me Do" by Taylor Swift, and we're like, we're just gonna recreate the entire video. That's what we did. And then in 3 days, it was arguably like, I hope we find the video because it is honestly one of the funniest things I've ever watched
It's
in my life.
hysterical. It's
It
so
is.
funny to watch.
It's honestly so much like the video, and it's hilarious. Like we got the costumes down, we got the props. It was hilarious. 3 days.
3 days. I'm not gonna give him the credit, but you know who you are, who choreographed it.
Yeah, he might live next to you.
Yeah, he might be my roommate. But that moment was so much fun. It was the perfect embodiment of just guys having fun.
Yeah,
Like,
start to fun.
just in that moment, it was just like, all right, like this is just what it's about, just having fun with a group of people.
Yeah,
And those two experiences right there.
that's
Uh,
great.
what about you? I know we're running a bit long on time, but
Yeah, I mean, like I
I
said,
want to hear your answer to this
I
question
could
too, and then
talk
we'll
about
wrap it up. Yeah.
this as you can see. I think competing wise, like obviously I have a lot of great from Fairfield. It's interesting because I have a lot of great rowing memories competing, and like there are great ones from Fairfield. They're not like in the same. They're not the same end result as some of the other ones that I have in my life, but they're still really special. And I think the one that really stands out for me, well, actually, there's two that really stand out for me in competing. One's an individual one, and one's a team one. The individual one is when I PR'd on my 2K my senior year. I hit 635, which for people who don't know, like
Damn.
it's
I
a
didn't
it's
know
a
you got that
it's
low.
a solid score for someone my size. And for me to like do that after all the work I put in my senior year was like really special, and I really like fully invested in rowing my senior year, like absurdly. So that was really unique and special, and I couldn't believe I did it. But team wise, my favorite memory is probably my sophomore year. We were at Dadville's my sophomore year. It was, which is like our national championship, and as I mentioned, Dadville is actually a big race for me. My grandfather used to run Dadville's actually, and my uncle, my godfather, now is the vice president of the regatta.
Oh, wow.
And like my cousins are now the ones who give out the medals, like I used to. So it winning there would have been really really special. Unfortunately, I never got to do it, but my semifinals my sophomore year, I was in the lightweight four, and I can't tell you every detail. I mean, I can't tell you every detail of the race, but that semifinal, like it was seeding for the finals. We didn't do great in the finals, but the semifinal, we had just found out that one of our teammates and one of my favorite people on the team, Alyssa Pernally, shout out to you. She's the biggest bro ever. I love her to
Shout
death.
out, mom. Yeah.
Um, my coxswain for years. She had just found out that she probably wasn't coming back to the university the next year, and we were very much emotionally shook because she was my teammate and my classmate, and I was like, how am I going to do another 2 years without her? And on top of that, there was a senior in our boat that was graduating. That was my basically my big brother on the team. Shout out to Greg. Um, and so there's a lot of transition in probably my closest group on the team. And we went out and raced. We had that semifinal. We're like, you know what? We're leaving all on the course here. Like, we got a final tomorrow, but the reality is, like, nothing's guaranteed. We're going to just hang and bang. And we went out there and just threw down a filthy race and we won. And, like, that was, like, one of the coolest things ever. My uncle and my parents were in the launch watching. They couldn't cheer, obviously, because it was like a ref launch. But, like, to be on my home course in that race and to just we didn't win the final the next day we didn't do great, but like to win in an intense race against some of the teams we did was really special. And that was really impactful for me in terms of personal. There are so many memories I could go through. I don't really know where I would begin because like it's
There are a
tough.
lot. There's too
There's
many.
so many people too. Like for me to pick one is like to me like being rude to the other people on the team because I have
Yeah.
so many great memories with everyone. But I feel like there were a few times like when we were like in gosh like when we had like spring break trainings and we did like this like the
Scavenger hunts.
scavenger hunt and
Yeah.
stuff, and like to me spring break was my favorite time at any point in the team. And like there were some moments just like whether it be people like Chris Lamberti doing crazy things or like just learning new things about new people. I can't even put a finger on it, but like that's when I just loved my life. Like I love all my teammates, and like those were the special moments where I bonded. And like to me, yes, I care about the winning, but it's the community that and the brotherhood that really kept me loving the sport. It's the most team oriented sport I could possibly know. So to have those experiences were just like phenomenal to me.
It's all it's about. Doing
It's all
something bigger than yourself. It's a
yeah,
beautiful thing. It really is.
yeah,
Seamus, we made it to the end.
we did.
I have one final question for you. Are you ready? This is the game show question. So
Yeah,
this is the show staple in capturing everything that we really talk about, and the
yeah,
idea of finding all the good in the world, like we talked about in the first part with our faith in the second part.
yeah.
Really, I mean, we talked a lot about rowing, but it's a lot about brotherhood and family in that second part. So the game show question: you get three doors.
Okay,
If you can't decide between the three doors, we've cheated already with our first couple guests, so it's okay. You don't have to decide. Door number one, I want you to think of something that you've wanted to try for a while. Maybe it's something that you thought about for a while and you really wanted to do, but for whatever reason, you didn't get around to doing it. I want you
Yeah.
to think about it, and I want you to pass that challenge off to me. And the goal of this door is you pass a challenge off to me, and I have to accept the challenge. I have to try it no matter what, success or
Hmm.
failure. And the goal is you see someone else is doing it, and it kind of like reignites that fire in you that, like, this was a good idea. I'm going to go out, go do that thing again, and see if I can find the good in that thing. Door number two
Yeah.
is that I want you to think of something that you turn to safely, of course, in times of like stress or anxiety.
Yeah.
Something that you turn to that helps you get back to equal footing, getting back on that path, finding the good in all things. No matter what it is, I want you to pass that off to me as something that I can try in my day to day and incorporate it and see how, if it works for me, if it doesn't work for me, and the same kind of thing. If it's success or failure, it's about trying something new. And door number three is I want you to recommend somebody who you think would be really good to speak with, someone who helps you find joy in your day to day, someone who helps you grow in your day to day. And before we get to the answer to that question, I just have to reveal that you are the first person who is a result of the game show question.
Wow. I'm
So,
honored. I
yeah,
genuinely am honored.
um, at this point, uh, I know you haven't seen Michael's interview yet because it hasn't come out yet, but
So
Michael's
excited
interview will
to
be
watch
out, and it feels really good. I mean, we're good friends anyway, but it feels really great that I got to have a deep conversation with somebody who I know has impacted not just me, but has impacted so many of our friends, so many people in this life. And it feels really great to be able to share this experience with you. So,
it.
those are the three doors. And the
Yeah.
final caveat is I want you to be as honest and open as possible. I don't want you to feel like you have to pander to the audience at all. So, when I'm editing, we're going to cut like really close to here. So, you
Okay.
could say whatever you want. And the audience isn't going to know the answer until either the person shows up on the podcast or I attempt whatever you throw out. So, there you go. Accepted. So that's what I say when I cut back in is just accepted, like challenge accepted. And
Mhm.
now I just pissed everyone off because they have no idea what we talked about. They have no idea how much time's passed. It could be tomorrow. And they'll be like,
Right
oh,
on.
I don't know. Seamus, this was lovely. In the fullest extent. I mean, we've had so many good conversations in real life, and I'm so glad that a conversation where I've asked you questions that I haven't gotten to ask you, even in our deepest of conversations, especially about our relationship with rowing, or relationship with faith. We
Yeah.
got to do it here, and my favorite quality in the guests that I've had so far, who are just my friends, is just the transparency and how committed my friends are to the same kind of goal that as the show, where it's just expressing the ideas of how we find love, how we find joy in this world, because so many people are struggling every day to
Yeah.
recapture it. I struggle every day to keep sight of it, and these conversations help me immensely. Um, so I can't thank you enough for just
Yeah.
sitting down with me today. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for checking out part 2 of my interview with Seamus. It has been such a pleasure to have him on. He's such a great friend, such an incredible thinker, and someone who I continue to learn from on a day-to-day basis. And I hope you could have had at least one takeaway from either part 1 or part 2 of this conversation. Once again, if you enjoy what you're hearing and you want to hear more, definitely follow along. Hit that subscribe button no matter what platform you're listening on. If you're on YouTube, subscribe button, notification bell. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Comment. I don't know. Cool YouTuber stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and hang out. It means so much to me that you would even think about doing something like this and taking the time out of your day to come hang out. It is such a privilege to be able to put this together, and I can't thank you enough. Once again, thank you so much. Until next time, see you.